Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon meeting of the BOCC. Today, we're going through liaison reports. I'll just go down my list. First one I have is ARPA.
Mr. Chairman, for me, ARPA has always been the Advanced Research Projects Agency. And they're the ones who actually began the internet, or I should say, the ubiquitous nature was taken over commercially. But before that,
You mean the group that Al Gore put together?
I beg your pardon?
The group that Al Gore put together. when
Oh,
he
yes,
invented
of course.
the-
Thank you.
All right, can everybody hear me okay?
Mhm.
Awesome. So we have a few things regarding ARPA today. We do have a quarterly update. We also have some requests. So I was going to start with the request, which is the front page that you guys have. The first ones that I was going to go over is we have a couple more beneficiary requests from Granges. We have the Rhodes Valley Grange. They are requesting $7,475 in reimbursement for expenses during the COVID period. I did want to point out for Rose Valley, they did send in a request a couple months ago. We came to the board approved roughly 5,000. After we went back, got all of their backup documentation, they had actually selected the incorrect date range. So we had them go back and give us new updated expenses, and their total was different. So the board did previously approve roughly 5,000, and then adjusting the date range, it changed their request to $7,475.
So about 2,000 more.
Yes.
Actually, I don't understand the date range.
So ARPA only covers a certain period because we had CARES. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And then we have Silver Lake Grange. They are requesting $15,186. They took the approach of the revenue loss calculation that the federal government had put out for people to utilize. They took their expenses, what their revenues were previously based on a 3-year period, and then what the adjustment was. And then that is the $15,000 request. So they approached it a little differently than the other Granges. It does take into consideration the expenses that they incurred during the time period and the loss of revenue.
So I'm assuming then we review their calculations and agree with what they're coming up with.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So can you give me a breakdown of that calculation?
Yes.
Because I think the other ones were just the direct expenses, not the loss of revenue.
Right.
That's correct.
So I don't know that I want to cross over into making up of the revenue, but
And I thought I had that. I might have to bring that back to you. I can, you don't have meetings next week, correct? Maybe I can come back the
No.
following week.
We don't have meetings next week. That's
Okay.
correct. So it has to be the following if you want.
Okay, and I can
So,
bring that
Do the
breakdown.
Granges, they have an option? They can do it this way or that way?
Yes, yep. They're under the direct qualification category. The county has the opportunity to assist any nonprofits that we would like. So they can approach it however they would like. They chose to do the revenue loss calculation. I think they're a little bigger than the other Granges. They support some more things. So they actually have a retired CPA that sits on their board that helps them with the revenue calculation. And so they took that approach.
So all the Granges could use that approach as well.
Yes.
Okay, so they had their chance. I'm okay with going forward with it.
I'm a little antsy over paying for lost revenue. It's a little bit of a fictitious number. The other one, fixing the roof or residing something, that's something I can really put my hand on, but this is largely a volunteer organization and I don't like opening that door of paying for something that I really am not certain about.
What if they're, yeah. I get the hesitation. I guess I'm probably okay with, it's not like they're come back, it's for a set time frame, so they're not gonna be able to come back. And Rose Valley then won't see that this got this and come back for an adjustment. I mean, they kind of chose what they
How do you
want.
know that?
I mean, they could, but they would still have to request it from the board. And then the only thing that I would present to the board is, just Rose Valley as an example. Let's say they did that calculation and the calculation came back as 8,000. I would say, well, I would only recommend
The difference.
the difference between the 7,500
Well,
and the 8,000.
Well, yeah.
I mean, the fact that they had the choice, they made their choices, and I'm
Yep.
sure they figured out which way was the best, most advantage to them.
And they were provided every category under ARPA, what qualifies. All of them were given the same information on what they could do.
Commissioner Mortensen and I absolutely agree. We shouldn't change the rules after the game starts.
Yeah.
right? I don't think we did in this case. They had the rules and they made their choices. So I'm okay going forward with them.
They had the benefit of a retired CPA to help them.
Mhm.
Yeah. I too am okay sticking with it.
And I can provide the backup documentation and the calculation.
Yeah,
to the
I
board
would,
as
I
well.
would, I'm still curious.
I will do that. So then the next, I have another request on there. Before we talk about that one, I wanted to drop down to a project update for Woodland. I did hear back from them. We do have the subrecipient agreement completed in their hands. Now I'm waiting to get it back from them with their signature so then I can put it on the board's agenda. I did send that to them on August 8th and I have not heard back. So I will send another follow-up email. But I just wanted to give a.
I
status update.
apologize. I did not get, who is it that,
Woodland, the
City-
exit,
City of Woodland?
yes.
oh, the exit.
The exit project.
21, yeah.
I actually did remember to call them and they said they were gonna send that in. They mentioned, because we're talking about exit 21, they mentioned last night, last 3 years, they've applied for some funds to help with that. And they were denied again for that. One of the reasons were they didn't have enough match on their part. And I think I got the sense that the impetus for the change in the impact fees was to help them get more
Yeah,
match.
I don't know what's going on there. I know recently the city approved $1 million to study solution for exit 21. It seems like a lot of money to be told you have a problem, but
Anyway, I was
My-
just
my-
glad I remembered to call them so I didn't get chastised again.
So my
Appreciate it.
only concern is that has locked up quite a bit of money, 2.5 million or something like that.
Yes.
And it has to be committed though, by the end of next year.
Mhm.
These construction projects, I mean, they take a long time. I'm worried that we might be left with that money left unspent because there's.
we'll use it.
To know.
Yeah.
But it's a good point. But
Yeah.
Does Woodland know that they've got a kind of a practical deadline and,
Yes,
okay.
Yep.
you've only told them half a dozen times.
yes.
Yeah.
Give or take, maybe a little more.
Yeah. I think they had a milestone to reach for funding and they were not very far off, like how
Mhm.
much off? $500,000?
I'm not positive. But I heard that as well. I wasn't given specific numbers though.
Yeah, so the question we need to tackle is, do we want to? Oh, it is on. Exit 21 is a problem.
Yeah,
If it's $500,000 that they need in order to proceed, is that something we'd be willing to throw into the pot.
If that's the only blockade moving forward, I think we should consider that pretty strongly, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
If
Think
you have
about-
the money,
Huh?
if you have the money.
Right. Exit 21 is one of those things that actually affects everybody in the county. So I'm not quite as tight there. So is that something you would find out?
If we have that much left or what they're needing to meet their matches.
What they're needing? I can find out.
Okay,
But I think it's hinged also on whether we believe that's the last of the stumbling blocks.
Yeah, exactly, because Commissioner Weber alluded to, I don't want to come in on all that and then it just gets lost.
the nice thing is this is under the revenue loss category, which gives us some wiggle room at the end of our time frame. If they aren't able to complete what is expected of them, we can use governmental wages to pull whatever they didn't spend out and put it back into our general fund.
Okay,
So we are a little safer on the revenue loss side.
okay.
So how much extra time is that? It's like,
No extra time. We just have the ability that if they aren't meeting their contract requirements and we're coming to the end of next year, the county can take that whatever's remaining back
Right.
and put it into governmental wages too, so we don't lose.
So,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like one last chance to get a grant from the state next spring, probably.
Yes.
So that'll give us a little bit of time.
that's the good news and the bad news. The bad news, it doesn't inspire any confidence that Exit 21 will be dealt with.
Well, those are 20-year projects
Yes.
and they've already been struggling at it for 10. So
Yeah.
Even being the youngest, I probably won't be around to see the end of that.
neither one of us will either.
So that is the update on Woodlands. So then our next request is have been having some discussions. We are, if you look at the second page on the quarterly update, under the direct qualification side, you will see that we have roughly 2 million left that still needs to be obligated under direct qualification. So there's been some discussion with a whole group of people talking about the HVAC systems for various buildings that the county owns. I think specifically we have the jail, the Hall of Justice, and the annex building. And admin, sorry. So we went over the projects. We met with Will, and he gave us a breakdown of what each one of those is costing the county, where they're at in the projects. And then we came up with a plan, and we wanted to request or present to the board 1 million to go towards HVAC systems for county buildings. HVAC is a direct qualifying option under ARPA.
So this discussion started after a finance committee meeting. We met with Kaylee on the ARPA funding and this direct qualification side. We also have concerns that this pool of funds will not meet the deadlines and you still have 2 million left to be unallocated. We know that we have over $1 million that is in contract and will be spent on county HVAC systems this year, 2023, not 2024. So we're asking to go ahead and allocate 1 million in ARPA funds to offset that cost. We have well over $1 million allocated for 2024 as well. But just to reduce our risk of loss, we are asking that you allocate 1 million in ARPA funding because it does qualify under HVAC systems.
Then that would leave 1.3 unallocated.
Yes.
So you said we are asking, who's the we? You're representing
was
the CIP committee?
No, this is the finance committee. So Deborah Gardner's here. Kathy is part of these discussions. We have also met with Public Works. I see Savannah and Sean both on the call. This came after a finance committee. We met with Kaylee regarding ARPA, and we are concerned about some of the restrictions on the direct qualification funding and potentially missing some of those funds when we know there are projects that are in contract happening right now. So we're asking you to go ahead and allocate 1 million of the remaining 2.3 towards the systems and projects that we have in place right now.
Are you worried about other public works projects not being able to be completed by the end of, by 2026?
There's been some concerns, and I see Susan's on, and she also brought up the contract language and the deadlines and what that means. The money's needing to be in contract by the end of 2024 is a little different take than what was previously understood, which raised some concerns on whether or not projects.
Previously understood. We've been talking about that deadline for, right, since the very beginning.
And we
Yes.
are not asking to take any funds that have been allocated to public works. You
Sure.
have
No. I
2.3
understand.
million
Yeah.
that's unallocated.
You're more concerned about the 2.3 that hasn't been allocated yet. No. So we talked about perhaps setting aside $500,000 for Woodland, an additional $500,000. Was that kind of what we're looking at? You mentioned if they need another
That's the
$500,000.
number I think I heard, but it's,
So there is money. We've got capacity
So
to do that.
The
and
Woodland
still
project
with
is
the-
under
and still
revenue
with the
loss.
million for
So
what you're talking about.
2 different pots,
Hmm.
and the Woodland project qualifies under a different pot. And I don't believe that you have an additional $500,000 in
No.
that pot
I
to
don't
give
think
them.
we do.
Under revenue
So
loss.
we're talking about, revenue loss is one side. You have 10 million in that pot, and you have 11.4 million in direct qualification. And we're saying that you have, the county right now is spending over $1 million on HVAC systems that do qualify in this pot this year.
Just to be clear, if we had to get another 500,000 to get exit 21 going, we do not have it in ARPA.
No.
However, again, there's a lot of projects that are allocated and not yet spent. You might not have the money now.
Are you talking like Riderwood project and stuff like that?
I see a lot of money in that's allocated to IT that I'm not sure. It just depends. They have to be in contract next year. So
Yeah.
it just depends if they'll be in contract and ready to fulfill those projects and meeting the deadlines.
You're just saying that's could be a fluid number.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, and from a, it's a really terribly ignorant question, but from a finance standpoint, giving the million to HVAC will free up money. Can we reach that money for exit 21 if that?
Ooh, I don't think so, because we're using CIP funds to fund facilities. It's a restricted source from REIT dollars, but it does free up additional funds for our future projects. Like I say, we have 900 and.
Oh,
I
yeah,
know-
yeah, understood. No, I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna, I don't believe this will be the case, but let's just assume exit 21 will get a proper kickoff with 500,000. I think we owe it to the county to do that. But I don't know where we get the money.
Yeah.
I mean, ARPA has 272,000 roughly left in revenue loss, get you a little over halfway there. And I mean, like Carolyn said, come end of 2024, truing up these numbers, there may actually be more left
Okay.
over than what we see.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of heartburn with this
I'm okay
idea. Are
with
you
it.
guys okay with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of HVAC, but that's a different question.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that you're doing this.
My pleasure.
So I did notice that South Clover Park was listed in two different categories.
Yes.
Why wouldn't it
So,
completely fit under direct obligation?
and Susan can probably speak better to the details, but that project has different components to it. One, a few pieces of it do not fall under the water sewer project category. So they've split it and put some under revenue loss, and then a few a few components to the project do fall under the water sewer category. So that's why that project was split. And Susan might be better with the specifics on what, I know she sent it to us today actually, but
She's up there.
it's not my wheelhouse and I already forgot.
So the reason that one ended up being split, so we came through originally and asked for several road projects. And then we found out that that fund, because it cannot be from the infrastructure fund, was over allocated. And about a month later, the decision came out with the ARPA funds to allow for stormwater to be included. So we had money taken away from our original allocation. And as part of the Cloverdale project, there are two very large culverts being replaced. And so to make up the difference from what was unallocated from that project, we're taking it from the infrastructure allocation because it can be applied to the storm. So that is the only reason why that is from two different categories. Clear as mud?
So the $1.6 million is for stormwater projects? And the remainder is for pavement?
So yes, the infrastructure is going to be applied directly towards the two large culverts that are coming out. The rest is going to be going towards pavement. And in addition to this money, we have STPG money in here. We have CRAB money in here. This is a very large, this is like a $5 or $6 million project that I was cobbling funds together to make up the entire project cost.
But if we needed to come up with some more money for exit 21, the department has reserves that could cover that still, right?
Reserves to cover our no, we would not have enough money to cover this project without dropping other projects. That's why we asked for the money for these projects.
Well, I'll just go find out how believable or what the number is and
See if it's a true number.
We may be
and
able to
true
afford
need.
it with what we've got, yeah.
Yeah,
I beg your pardon.
We may be able to afford it with what we've got if they just need a little bit more.
Right, and also I think the believable factor in there is important.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for?
I
I don't have
appreciate the spreadsheet. That's very nice.
Very, very much so, yeah.
I also did want to put on the board's radar, the latch funding. I don't know if the board remembers that or not. It was there was additional money left over in one of the funds that ARPA had released. And they were dispersing it amongst counties, and Cowlitz County qualifies for roughly, it's a little over 200,000.
Yeah, that
Can
one.
be used for any governmental purpose. I will be going into the Treasury portal and submitting our application to receive that funding. So that may also be an option as well for Woodland. So
You called it Lash?
it's called Latch. And I can't remember what it stands for.
Local assistance, I think, is the first.
Yeah,
You've been in the business too long. That ain't too
Yes.
easy.
Well, no, I mean, we talked about it when I was working on with the Public Plans Committee, and that was
Mm.
something that NACO had worked really hard on
Yes.
because it's based on well, the extra money that's left over.
Yes, yep.
And I think that was some of the funds that they had suggested we might use to supplant a general fund donation for that institute that they want to set up.
Mm.
So we've been tracking that.
I see, Sean has his hand up. Go ahead.
Morning, commissioners. Haley, we're also going to chat about Cowlitz Park as well. With the pit toilet out there.
Oh, yes. And you just needed clarification. Well, we all needed clarification on what was specifically approved. Sean, I don't know if you want to give more details on the park itself.
Sure. Commissioner, I'm sure you're aware we were Cowlitz Park out that towards the end of Rose Valley. We were looking at a large pit toilet out there. I believe that the commissioners had talked about using ARPA dollars to fund that project, but I don't think it was ever formally approved.
Is that the $47,000 that's listed for Parks and Rec?
I believe so.
That sounds about the right amount that
Yeah.
Alyssa had mentioned it would cost. It was on that list that was approved by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee that I proposed about a year and a half ago. One of a whole series of things, so. You're right, I don't think we've formally
Mm-mm.
made the allocation. I'm okay with going forward if you need the official approval.
And I think,
Yeah.
okay. Perfect.
Does that help you, Sean?
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
We've just shifted a whole bunch of money to Orange District, didn't we?
Okay. I know.
Man.
We're gonna expect
Gonna get a
favors.
reputation
Yeah, I know.
of being a spendthrift.
Health and
I don't
Human
think he's-
Services.
I don't think he's hearing us.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, good afternoon. Gina James, Health and Human Services. I have a couple things on my list, just some updates and upcoming activities going on. This time of year is typically when the state is renewing contracts that fall in the state fiscal year. So we've been watching for those and processing those as we get them. This year has been a little bit different in that they've come fairly late. So the state fiscal year starts July 1. And so we have some contracts that ended the end of June, and we anticipate the new contracts and we sit and patiently wait. We have.
So are the providers just taking vacation? They're just waiting for the money, or are they continuing to provide services? Because I know a lot of it is kind of ongoing treatment.
Most
programs.
continue to provide services.
They just have to use their own reserves until they get reimbursed.
Right.
Mm.
And typically, for July services, they would submit reimbursement in mid-August. But we're getting to a point where, anyways, so most continue to provide the services and ask me frequently for updates, which is okay. We have received some state contracts, so we are working through those. So we have received our Developmental Disabilities Administration contract. And so we're starting to work through that and get that reviewed and start the pass-through contracts with providers. So that will be coming up for the board. We also have a new contract this year with DVR, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. We briefly touched on this in the spring in a workshop, and I can send more information out. This is a contract due to some legislation that passed where the state is really wanting to boost transition services for students who are have developmental disabilities and they're graduating high school and helping to get them hooked up with employment services. And so this work is just for the county to help kind of get that going in the community and get kind of a program implemented. So we have, we just received it yesterday from DVR, that contract. So we're working through that now and looking through that.
So you're not going to be doing employment services. You're going to be looking for local providers like Goodwill and other folks who've
It
done
will
those kinds
be,
of things.
right, it will be the same employment providers for our adult program that will likely serve these
Like
students who are
LifeWorks
transitioning.
and
right.
Goodwill, and there was a third one, wasn't there?
Compass,
But,
Compass.
oh, Compass.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And employers overload, so
All
forth.
right, okay.
Right, so the contract we just received is to help some of our staff time to get the program sort of going and to, there has to be forms created and things like that and get that implementation, get it developed and implemented. So that's the contract that we've received, is to do some of that work at the county level. So that's a new one. We also have received our consolidated homeless grant. So this is a 2-year contract. We submitted the application in the spring. So this is the contract that has the HIN funding, as well as a portion of our document recording fees that are collected locally. There's a portion that gets sent to the state, and then it comes back in the form of a grant. And so this is that grant. The state looks to either work with local governments or contract directly in the community.
So those document recording fees are not part of our
Correct.
funds.
Right. When they get collected here, we keep a portion and another portion goes to the state.
Right.
And the state sends some of it back in the form of a grant. So that's what that grant is. We are working on, as I mentioned last spring, we submitted the grant application, and we also had issued a request for qualifications. We received 4 responses from that, and we're working with all of the providers on that. We have 2 contracts that we're drafting right now as pass-throughs, and one with CAP and one with the Mediation Center. I know they've been in contact and been talking with the board about that a little bit. So we're working on those 2 contracts and then continuing conversations with the other 2 providers about what that might look like. So.
Do you mind telling us who the other providers are? The other
Yes.
2?
So we received responses also from Community House on Broadway and Kai Rivers Recovery Cafe. So we're kind of talking through, right down here, talking through with them what that might look like and the services they want to provide, and see if it's a good fit and what that might look like. So the contracts that we have drafted now, we're kind of moving those ones forward, but we have some funding that is unallocated still that we could potentially award down the road. So we also have our CJTA contract, or criminal justice treatment account. We just received a draft last week, so we're giving feedback on that, and then we'll be waiting for the final contract. We issued a request for qualifications for that funding as well last spring and received 2 responses, maybe 3. I'll have to go back and look now. 2 of our typical providers responded, the Columbia Wellness and Family Health Center. And then we also got a response from Kai Rivers Recovery Cafe for that funding as well. So we'll be working through that once we get the final contract.
Again, the CJTA, that's for working with drug court.
Primarily drug court
participants.
participants to provide substance use treatment and recovery support services for those drug court participants. Yeah. And then the other upcoming contract is Community Development Block Grant, our public services contract. So we originally anticipated an amendment that would extend that, but we're now having to go through the process of a new contract. And so we're working through that. What that means to us is we will have a public hearing that we'll schedule. We the public hearing will close out last year's grant and then consider the New Year's services. So we've had some conversation with the board about this. This is the grant that historically has gone towards Meals on Wheels. So we'll have a public hearing getting scheduled to discuss those things and get community input. Part of that public hearing will also include a closeout of a separate CDBG grant that we received during COVID. This was late 2020 or early 2021. There was a CDBG grant that came to us that included funding for the jurisdictions within our county. So there was a little bit of funding for the city of Kelso. There was a little bit for the city of Longview, the city of Klamath, et cetera. It included Wahkiakum County and the city of Cathlamet as well. It was a kind of a big collaborative opportunity. And that particular funding was specific for rent, mortgage, and utility assistance. And so that contract has ended. There's part of that requirement is to do a public hearing to close it out. And so you'll see a public hearing get scheduled for CDBG, this variety of CDBG activities to close out a couple old grants and then consider the new one moving forward. So just a heads up on that, and let me know if you have any questions. It's a little confusing. Let's see.
Just out of curiosity, do you know why they want a public hearing on the closeout? I'm wondering what they're looking for.
I think they want an opportunity for the public to give input on what happened with the grant. And so we'll do a brief review of the funding, what was utilized, what it went towards, that kind of thing. And it's an opportunity. It's always been part of the requirement with CDBG. I don't know. Yeah, it's all done with. So it's not, it's not going to change anything. It's sort of wrapping up the,
Right.
yeah. So, okay. So keep your eyes out for all of those things. And then I wanted to touch on a couple different things too while I'm here. One thing I heard yesterday morning, I think it was during some budget update, talking about document recording fees. And I just wanted to provide clarification. I always get confused about this, so I just want to make sure others are clear on this too. Document recording fee. There are several document recording fees that get collected. There's just a portion that are dedicated to housing and homeless services. So oftentimes when we're talking bigger budget picture document recording fee, it includes all of the document recording fee funding. And then we can talk more specifically about those that are dedicated to housing and homeless services. So I just wanted to make that distinction because I know there's in the bigger discussion yesterday morning, there was talk about, big loss and a big reduction from this year compared to last year. So I just wanted to clarify that we have seen a reduction in document recording fees designated to housing and homeless services, not quite this, the same level when we're talking the bigger budget picture. It's all of the document recording fees. So I just wanted to offer that clarification.
Did that clarify anything for you?
Or make it worse.
Yeah, see, the issue I have with that is I figure doc recording fees are pretty much tied to housing.
There are other document recording fees that are not tied to housing.
You mean, well, anytime I go into the the auditor's office to record something, most of the money comes from housing transactions, I thought. Is that's not true then, I guess.
I don't know all the details to all of the recording fees. The ones that are designated for housing and homelessness are tied to real estate transactions.
Okay.
But in some of the budget information that was shared yesterday morning, that was reflecting all of the document recording fees. So
Because there is an effort, I don't know how far it's gone, where it doesn't make sense to charge people $300 to record something that is not a large dollar volume to start with, like a marriage certificate or stuff like
Mhm.
that.
yeah. 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 So
So Gina, I've got your explanation just raised a question. In the last year and a half or so, we have used document recording fees to contribute to 3 affordable housing projects. Are you saying that those monies actually came from designated affordable housing document recording fees, or?
yes.
So we still have a big chunk of money that we're supposed to be spending on homelessness that we're not spending?
No,
Or is
So-
that all the same?
it's all the same.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that is all, okay, that's what my understanding was, okay.
Yeah, but there are other document recording fees that are not designated for housing and homelessness.
But you haven't been giving us those figures.
No, we're not involved in any of that. But I just wanted to try to clarify something, maybe I'm not, but because when I hear document recording fee, I automatically think housing and homelessness. But there are other recording fees that are not connected to housing and homeless. So when we heard some of the budget information yesterday morning, I think Kathy was sharing a report on document recording fees. She was talking about all of the document recording fees, not just not just housing and homeless.
And she is a employee of the state.
No, when
Kathy.
Kathy was here yesterday
Kathy
morning,
was here.
yeah, talking about document recording, she was sharing some document recording fee budget information. And so she was representing all of the document recording.
So
fees.
if I remember a few years ago, Carolyn had kind of a nifty little chart about
Mhm.
how the document recording fees are all divided up.
Yes,
And of course, since then, they've added another $100. So
yeah,
maybe she can update that. And
yeah, she does have a nice breakdown. It shows, it slices the dollar in so many ways and shows where those go. And so that, yeah, it did show, we can get that recirculated. That might help. So I just wanted to try to clarify, and if there are questions specific to the housing and homeless document recording fees, that's always the part that I bring to the board and talk through.
okay.
Okay, and I also wanted to touch briefly on 1/10 funding a little bit. I know that the board has been hearing from county departments that receive 1/10 funding, and there will be more discussions coming up as the budget process moves forward. I think in October, there is a 1/10 budget workshop. So there'll be kind of some dedicated time to sit down and talk through what the departments are requesting for the next 2 years. I wanted to pass out kind of we sometimes do these projections with the funding. So I wanted to pass this out really quick.
Thank you.
We often share where we're at with the funds in terms of the beginning fund balance, what our revenue looks like, the expenditures that the actual expenditures, and then what is either approved in budget is what we put in these spreadsheets. What is in front of you is just a projection if the mental health tax is currently set to sunset in March of 2024. If that sunsets and the revenue stops at that time, this just shows what we have. And if we continue to fund sort of what is currently funded in this year's budget, for example. This shows just kind of how long the funding will last. So I just wanted to give a little bit more information to the board as you're thinking about the tax and what that looks like moving forward, and go into different budget discussions. And certainly if there's other pieces of information that would be helpful as you're thinking through that, please don't hesitate to reach out and
Yeah.
we can get more information.
That is helpful. Thank you.
So I'm a little confused about 2026 and the ending fund balance. Almost $7 million, but you're not showing that on the chart. Was that a mistake?
So
The blue
the
is supposed to be the beginning fund balance, right?
blue is the beginning fund balance, and then it shows no revenue, and then I didn't plug in any.
Oh. Digits make, decimal points make a difference.
Yeah,
Never
they
mind, I figured it out.
rounded one number, not the other.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I see
Oops.
that. Yep, sorry about that.
Okay, never mind.
Decimal there. Yep. The 67 cents. That'll always get you.
That's assuming we just continue spending the way we have been, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This just looking at what was approved this year in budget and extending that out. There's a pretty large fund balance in there. So
Well, I think we just added 87,000 back to the balance. The grant we approved, we accepted today for Marin, and
Oh,
she mentioned that would,
her request
that would
then
lower
maybe
her request
smaller
for
than.
the
it
Lower
was
her
asked.
request, yeah.
right,
So basically,
Mhm.
if we just stayed at our same level, we're good through 2025, assuming these numbers
Yeah, we
prove
did.
true.
Yeah, yeah. We
Well,
tried to factor in COLAs and, your kind of typical staff increases, but
Right.
do you have an escalation there? It's simply based on like your CPI
Yeah.
estimate?
a little bit, I think what we included was just like 2% COLA and then an estimate of step increases for staff, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner Weber was giving me a bad time. He said he just wants it to last through 2024.
So anyways, as I mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out if there's other types of information that might be helpful. We'll certainly we usually bring a giant spreadsheet to that workshop that shows the department, the different requests and where we're at with the funding and all of that. So we'll prepare all those usual documents, and if there's something specific you have in mind, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's very helpful because one conversation we had, I think on a Monday or something is if we let that sunset and then we wanted to repurpose it for something else, it actually gives us some time to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So that's that. The last item I wanted to touch on is the Veterans Relief Fund. So we had some discussion maybe a month or so ago. I had sent some information to the board about the Veterans Relief Fund.
Hmm.
I went to the July Veterans Advisory Board meeting. Commissioner Mortensen was there as well. So we talked a little bit with the advisory board about the fund balance. It has built up over time. So there's quite a bit of funding we're receiving more in revenue than what we're spending in veteran assistance each year. So it has built up over time. So we just wanted to bring this up and see if there's something we wanted to do about that. We can, of course, just continue on status quo as we've been doing and letting that continue to go up. We can look at doing special projects with the funding. I talked quite a bit about that with the Veterans Advisory Board. There is interest from them in looking at some special projects. And then I think another option is to look at shifting the funding around. And I think there's an ability to shift it to the county general fund for a period of time as well. That was not the favorite option of the advisory board. I'm just gonna
Imagine.
Throw that out there. But they, they would like to see it used for veterans and veteran assistance. So we talked quite a bit about the option of special projects and looking at, that would look like some type of RFP process, something like that. One idea I wanted to bring up is we could do something similar to the, right now with the document recording fees we have posted on our website. It's called an emergency fund application. Any organization can apply to it at any time throughout the year. It doesn't have a set open close date, and we just review them as they come in. So we could consider doing something like that with this as well, not necessarily an emergency, but an open sort of bid posting that just stays open on our page, and we could review requests as they come in, or set, we'll review every quarter or twice a year or something like that. Any requests that have come in for the advisory board was also clear that they were interested in one-time type of special projects. So not supporting like ongoing operation type stuff, but one-time type of expenses that were in need of a veteran serving organization. So like the example we talked about in the advisory board meeting was a veteran serving organization provides transportation to veterans to medical appointments or whatever, and need a vehicle to do that. So that would be like a one-time expense that would help to provide assistance to veterans locally. So that's just an example, but they were supportive of more of the one-time cost type of scenario. So anyway, so I just wanted to bring that up and share that information and discussion from the advisory board. I think I committed myself to bringing information back to the next meeting at the advisory board in October, if I remember right. So I don't know if there's any initial thoughts.
I would agree with them that it should be spent on veterans. And I don't know what it can all be spent on. One-time special projects. If there's a company that helps repair a veteran's roof or they need a wheelchair or stuff like that, is that all would fit under those type of things?
I believe so. Yeah. And I think it would be the service organizations applying, and that would
Then they would
submit.
take care of that type of stuff.
Yeah, for certain
Yeah.
projects. Yeah.
Are those projects usually means-based, or is it regardless of income? If there's a need, we fix it.
There is the income eligibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do a very good job of what they do right now, and they interview veterans, and veterans is a catch-all. We tend to think of a veteran as being somebody to get into massive gunfights or something like that, but there are a lot of veterans who served 2 years in Omaha, Nebraska, and
Yeah.
I don't know that. One of the things I like about this group is they actually try and separate out people they think are worthy and necessary and need the support versus someone who's just taking advantage of it. That's something we don't find in other areas. I'm surprised that they don't spend everything they have coming in, but that's both to their crew credit. They're pretty tight on their allocations. They just increased the benefits, but like the funeral benefits is up to like $3,000.
I think that might be, yeah.
And $3,000 today doesn't buy you a funeral.
Right.
So I'd almost prefer, rather than getting involved with third-party contracts or even buying a car, who's gonna maintain it, who's gonna drive it, and it seems like in a good organization, your fellow veteran or member of the VFW, so yeah, I'll drive you. You know, I think maybe we have a gasoline fund or a mileage fund, but certainly buying a car doesn't seem right.
So Gina, I'm a little unclear. You said you were going to report back to us in October or to them in October
The advisory board.
about the ideas that we want them to consider?
All of the above.
All of the above, yeah,
Okay.
just after having more discussion with the Board of Commissioners and then going back to them. They were interested in, and I think they would want to be involved if we go down the road of special projects and either having sort of an ongoing open sort of bid posting on our page or a one-time thing. I think they would want to be involved in reviewing the applications that come in and recommending to the board which ones to approve.
Commissioner Mortensen, you suggested maybe they're a little too frugal. They need to expand a little bit to use
Some of
that.
those items, I really don't know the numbers, but yeah, they're very tight. You cannot, I mean, there's some pretty serious constraints on how much they'll help you on your food bill and how often they'll help you on your food
Okay.
bill, which is probably okay because we've got EBT and other programs that come into play. So it's really hard to figure that out. The things that are more difficult and that are not plentiful are like the funeral one. There's another one which is you touched on it, the wheelchair. You know, some of those folks are really pretty well tied down. I wouldn't want to do something special there. I'd want the VAB to say, oh, okay, so-and-so needs a wheelchair. We've got the money, we'll go buy you the wheelchair. Let them do it themselves. I don't want to take the personal out of that organization.
And I would agree with that. I don't want to really mess in their business. I would tend to encourage them, as I'm hearing from Commissioner Mortensen, to expand their horizons just a hair, because it sounds like they're doing a fairly good job of, well, obviously they're doing a good job of managing it because they're growing it.
Well, I
How
do
much-
have to admit, I never hear citizens say, oh yeah, I'm glad you're taxing me just not to spend it. You know, if you're going to pay taxes, we need to be responsible. Of course, fiscally responsible means a certain amount of reserves, but this is one example that it's the reserves are the ending fund balance is way too high. So, but they're the experts. I would trust their judgment on what kind of program
Mhm.
or combination of program adjustments that they can make.
What, how much do we have in the reserve? It was like 800K? Or is that what they pull in annually now?
The reserves right now, yeah, about 800,000. Let's see. What comes in each year? It's gone up over the years, but 2022 was about 200,000 that came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
So it's not like a huge amount.
Right.
Just a little tweak up and so forth. I think we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sends the wrong message if you've saved money and then we take it from you to use for something else. That doesn't make any
Oh,
sense.
that's a bad message.
Yeah.
Maybe we could I can talk with them at the next meeting about revisiting the assistance amounts and the uses. Maybe we really look at the uses. There's really specific ones like food and burial expenses. There's also a miscellaneous category, but maybe we could flush that out a little bit more. And
I wonder, the wheelchairs idea comes to mind. I wonder if there's any reason that the VAB wouldn't become the owner of half a dozen wheelchairs that they would lend out as required.
Well, the other thought that comes into my mind is, are they reaching all those who are eligible? Or, I mean, they're kind of place bound. They've got their offices and they've got their, you know, where they offer service from. So are there some out there that they're not connecting with? And I don't know what kind of program there would be to try to make sure that you connect. I mean, I don't really know if they
I think
do
the
a
answer,
cross check with HEN or
Yeah.
HMIS or something like that, just to see if they're meeting the need.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key thing.
We do
We-
try to connect there because there's quite a few veteran serving organizations in town, some that serve our homeless population, and they meet regularly. We try to attend and share and make sure people know about the assistance and how to access it. So if they're working with a veteran, they can say, hey, go talk to one of the service centers and they can help you.
Well, you gave us the list of the pie chart and the list of all the
Mhm.
services and stuff. And I submitted that actually to the Chamber of Commerce for our article for this month.
oh, you're doing the article this?
Well,
Oh,
I
this
can't
past
remember. I
month.
just thought this would be good thing to get some publicity out. People ought to know what the money goes for.
Yeah, there's, I have a little heartburn with that because we're not intended to make people dependent on charity or substitute their income with someone else's tax dollars. So if someone doesn't know about the service and is doing fine, I have a hard time saying, I got to go out there and call her. And hey, did you know you could buy an extra cup of coffee if you took advantage of this program?
Well, that's one of the
reasons.
reasons I asked about the means testing, and it's not all that high. So if you're not getting the assistance because you don't know the programs are available, you're living in pretty meager existence. So again, I trust the committee to do their vetting, that they're not giving away the form, but
They're a super good committee.
So.
Yep.
Does that kind of help you what you were looking for from us?
Yeah, I'll go at the next meeting with the advisory board. We'll talk more about the assistance allocation or the maximum amounts and what's allowed to apply for. We can talk through some of that and see if they would like to increase those a little bit.
and the one-time only projects, I think those are some good ideas. I like the idea of making vans available for medical transport. That kind
Yeah.
of makes sense too.
It would
If
be
they-
slightly different. The assistance to individuals, the individual, the veteran applies and goes through that process with the service centers. If it were an organization, looking to build a wheelchair ramp for someone, for example, they would be applying for the funding. So it's a little bit different.
Right.
And in that
Yeah.
case, we don't have a mechanism set up for that, but that's something. we-
And again, as soon as we organize something, it gets pretty darn expensive. In terms of transportation, most of us will help our fellow neighbor, and they know each other, and so they'll do whatever they can to help them. My part in that would be price of fuel being as it is, why don't we just reimburse you for some amount of mileage, but to have a special van, we already have pretty expensive public transportation.
That might have been a bad example.
Although not to the VA hospital. I mean, that's what the vans go for. Getting locally, yeah, that's not much of a
Well,
problem.
yeah, but with what I see on the ridership on the buses, it's just almost criminal in my mind. And that's where we spend it there, but we don't have a bus to the VA hospital. But we're forced by, never mind.
Okay, so maybe more to come after the next advisory board meeting. We'll go back. If you have other thoughts later on too, don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay,
You figure you want to bail before it gets too heavy, huh?
I'll stick around. That was all I had on my list.
That's a pretty big list.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Museum.
My list is not nearly as long as.
I don't think your mic is on, is it? There you go.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
And who are you?
My name is Joseph Govednik. I'm the director of the Cowlitz County Historical Museum. And my list is not nearly as long as the previous lists that were discussed. But I want to give a museum update. Since the last meeting, we did have the Cowlitz County Fair. We had about over 2,000 people came to the historic Bush Cabin, which is located on the fairgrounds that the museum operates. Last year, we had, in comparison, just a touch over 1,000 people. So I'm curious if these numbers relate anything to the numbers of attendees to the fair. And I'm going to probably talk to Kim at the event center or there's a commission, I think, for the fair, see what their numbers were. But I thought that was very encouraging. It seems like things are definitely rebounding.
Well, did you have the pie eating contest this time?
We didn't have a pie eating contest. We're going to bring it
And-
back.
and it
This
went
is the
up. What does
last
that
year.
tell
We're
you?
not doing it. I think we're going to do it next year because it
Get
is
those numbers
popular.
back down.
We did have a baking contest that another organization had, but we let them use our space. If you haven't been to the Bush Cabin, one thing nice about it is it's one of the few places in the fairgrounds that is covered with trees and it has lawn. And it's generally cool if it's a really rough summer day. Fortunately, the fair was not too hot this year, although we have experienced some rough weather before in the past.
Yeah.
We also partnered with the master gardeners who helped decorate the interior of the cabin with farm-based plants to complement the Barn to Be Wild theme at the fair. We had children's crafts, walking stilts, giant Lincoln logs that were on loan from the Children's Discovery Museum, live music from the Cowlitz Valley Old Time Music Association. And one of our local resident historians, Jerry Kelly, has a very popular What Is It table featuring old tools and instruments that people today wouldn't really recognize what they are. The What Is It component is, what is this metal contraption used for? And so the people that would come by were very intrigued with that. We've had that several years now. We also provided space for the Cowlitz County Historic Preservation Commission, which is under Building and Planning Department, and they operated an informational table. New this year, though, which I was pretty excited about, is we were able to open and clean the original Cowlitz County's first jail, which is right behind the cabin. So people would come by and they could look into it, but they could never get inside it, and leaves and debris over all the years had accumulated. So we had a work party a couple weeks before the fair to spruce up the cabin, and we were able to pry open that jail. We basically broke into jail instead of most people breaking out of jail. And so we broke into jail, we cleaned it up, we put some new locks on it, and people really enjoyed it. People would go inside and they do selfies and photo ops with their family, with people inside the old jail cell. We have some ideas for that jail cell for next year that will improve upon what we did. So that was a programming report from the fair. On a facilities level, I have an HVAC update, which is great news because as of last week, we now have air conditioning throughout the entire building. As many of you already know, that about a year and a half ago, the air conditioning units were stolen for probably the metal value of the materials. And we worked through county facilities and the contractor, which was J.H. Kelly. And over a 2-phase reinstallation period over this summer, we now have air conditioning operating. And I just want to give a special thanks to Don Nyman from facilities, because he was managing that project and facilitated communication between the contractor and the staff at the museum. We do plan to have a walkthrough and review the new controls. Actually, they're old controls, but there's some new components to it that it will be scheduled after Labor Day when all the final work is done. I did talk with John Erickson from J.H. Kelly, and he's going to cover that. And they're going to put some, a few other minor pieces onto the equipment, and what he said is balancing the system out, which I'm not sure what that means, but they will be balancing the system. We also last week concluded a large collections move from our offsite storage, which was located in the basement of the Merc in downtown Longview. We had been paying rent there for probably Commissioner Weber, you might be able to know this better than me, probably
as I can
decades,
remember.
decades and at least a couple decades. So part of the vision of having the new collection storage shelving in room 10 in our storage on site at the museum was to give more space so we can store these historic artifacts. And we brought in all the items from the Merc, which this is our last month of paying rent there, and we are out of the Merc. Although all the material is in the meeting room right now, it'll take a little bit of time to sort through it. And there's a lot of large items in there that will be, our curator will be eagerly working on. A program that is next planned is our September 1st Thursday program is on September 7th, and it'll be at 6 o'clock. It'll be in partnership with the Longview Public Library. The topic is E.N. Larry, Longview architect and engineer of a century ago, presented by his descendant, Don Larry. And a couple of reasons why we partnered with the Longview Public Library is number one, because construction projects often can go longer than you plan. I didn't know if we would have air conditioning in the meeting room in early September, and that room can get warm as it is when you have a lot of people in there, and early September can be some of the hottest days. So that was one concern. The other one was that it was a natural fit with the centennial of Longview, and the Longview Library does have the Longview room, which houses a lot of historic archives for the city of Longview. We felt it was just a natural partnership to have our program at their venue for September. So I hope if you're interested, you could join us at 6 o'clock on September 7th. And then finally, something I wanted to report on at this meeting, but I think I may have to do this next month, or I know I will have to do it next month, is we have an annual report on our education programs that our educator, Danielle Robbins, puts together. She gets that done every August. Unfortunately, this August, she fell very sick, and she's recovering now, but she has a very detailed report of all the education program activities of the previous school year. And she gets those compiled in August because she's up to her eyeballs in fair activities through the end of July. So I look forward to sharing that with you, because the numbers are looking really good, because we were having in 2019, our education programs were just really skyrocketing to the point where we were going to need another educator to help us provide the programs in local schools. And we were having to turn down schools, and then COVID hit, and it just changed everything. And now things are really coming back strongly. So I look forward to sharing some of those numbers with you and comparing some of the differences between this year and previous years in the last few years. And that's all I have to report. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any questions.
And a totally ugly mundane comment. You've had problem with homeless camping out there?
Yes, so we do have, we're right off of Allen Street. And so we have two areas, the front door and the back door of the museum have kind of a natural privacy barrier with the retaining walls that are there. There's, I mean, I'm speaking quite frankly, we have a lot of drug paraphernalia that we find almost every morning at our back door. The tin foil with all the burn marks all over it. I did put in a request for some security cameras, and I think there was, I think IT was working with that with some other departments to try to put together a bundle order. But yes, we do have occasional encampments. But I will also say though, since the contracted security company was brought on board, they have done a great job clearing the area every morning. And I almost, I think only just one time since we brought our security on board have I had to ask anybody to relocate from the back door area. So yeah, that's been going pretty good. But during the weekends and after hours when we don't have security, people do congregate there. We see the evidence every morning, just about.
So this is always after hours, right?
I believe it's after hours, yes,
Yeah.
because if
So the cameras, I think, may not be as useful as something that makes that place unusable after hours.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there's a simple device that is motion activated, fairly narrow focus, and it either turns on a sprinkler or just makes a hell of a noise, a shrill noise. I'm
Yeah,
serious.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
do they make those like shrieker
I'm
alarms
sure-
that are?
I'm sure they
motion
are
visual.
available somehow.
But I've wondered about that too, because just having a camera there doesn't necessarily deter the activity.
They don't care.
And but I will say though that having the security there has deterred activity, because I was seeing people there, you know, all different times during the day before and quite often in the morning, but
Yeah.
and it kind of comes in waves. There'll be periods where we don't have that much activity or that much garbage or debris, but then it kind of comes in waves and
I chuckle because I have a friend who actually has to protect his plants and his all that from deer, has a motion sensor sprinkler system. And when they come in, it comes on and it shoos them away.
Yeah, in this case, I prefer the noise. I don't think you're too close to any houses there, are you?
there's, I think, some
Probably about a
housing
block away,
block away or so.
block and a half,
On
actually.
the other side of the parking lots up here. Right?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Weber.
A couple of houses up
Mhm.
close to where you turn onto Cowlitz
so.
Way.
But I mean, it's not unbearable right now. And I like I said, having this contracted security has been an immense help. And I don't know how that may have affected other county facilities, but with the museum, it's made a great impact.
Well, it's always an issue. We will face renewing that contract at the end of this year. And I don't know what it will look like then, but if there a way that, when you don't want the birds to build a nest, you put this little spiky stuff there. There you go. I got you an answer.
I've thought of things like that, like building some kind of a cage that brings out the entrance somewhat so that there isn't the privacy. You have to go into a area because the exit and entrance to the building, because of the privacy,
Yeah.
if somebody needs to relieve themselves, for example, they definitely relieve themselves. We see it frequently. So I make a point when I first get there in the morning, check the front to make sure, because I've had some surprises where in the past, I come in and then I start opening the museum and I'm in the museum for a while and then, it's 5 minutes before 10 o'clock and you're opening the front door and you realize, oh my gosh, I forgot to check the front. We've got a problem here. So it happens frequently enough.
Well, the church across from us used to have problems, and they put in a gate that closed off that porch,
Mhm.
and that solved that problem. But your front entrance doesn't lend itself to that kind of structure. The back might, but I think you still may have the zones of privacy with those retaining walls. So
Right. And one thing is if there was, I have thought of sprinkler systems before, Commissioner Mortensen, as far as that would occasionally just keep that area damp and wet, because then nobody would want to at least camp there, but it wouldn't address the personal relief issue that happens.
There is a person in the audience there who would gladly provide you some noxious weeds.
Oh, that's right. I see her right there over my right shoulder.
well, he's already got it.
Yeah.
pretty good infestation around the perimeter of the parking lot. It's called English ivy, right?
Yeah.
That's creeping
It's
all
not
over the
noxious,
museum.
but it's invasive.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it.
I do contact Kim because I over at a facilities meeting, a public facilities district meeting there last week, and they had a great year at the fair. They and I don't recall all the numbers she gave, but it was a good year. Their vendors were very pleased. Quanis, who does the parking out there, said they had a record year. So I think the fair was very well attended and
I'll
they
share
were
that.
very happy with it. So yeah, ask her for the numbers.
I will, I'll share that because it'll be neat to see if we're getting this similar kinds of data.
Yeah. Any other? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much.
And thanks for bringing a guest.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for showing her around.
Well, Jennifer, you're the only one I left see in the audience.
Bye-bye. You didn't have to drive all the way in from the Gifford for this presentation, did you?
No, I did not. I did stay in the office today to work on some things. I just have a couple of short updates. So we are working this week and next week with a conservation crew. The Department of Natural Resources has sponsored this crew to come work with us in aquatic areas. So we're working with that crew to accomplish treatments on the Delameter as well as the Monaghan. And it's supportive of our knotweed grant that we get from the WSDA.
Okay.
So this is helping us to achieve more progress than we expected. So we're really excited about that.
How large is the crew?
A crew of 6 people.
Okay.
And then another project that I'm working on related to Mount St. Helens, I've been working with a group called the Mountaineers. They're a volunteer group who have been working very hard to remove several invasive species from the monument for many years now. And so I've been working with them to plan their event, which is this weekend. They do go up in a small group and they're able to camp at the mountain there. And historically, they've been focusing on Scotch broom and a couple of other species, but I think not only will they be looking at Scotch broom, but tansy, herb Roberts, and some of the knapweed. So some of our more common species as well. They'll be working with this weekend. So
it's just one weekend a year?
they do 2 events. We're looking to expand to 3 for next year if we can work that into the schedule. So I don't have a lot of other updates. We also experienced a great traffic from our citizens at the fair. We had some really great feedback, some really wonderful conversations. So it was a pleasant experience this year.
You were in, I think the last time you talked to us, you actually brought us one that was new to the area and you were concerned about it. Have you seen any more of that?
We actually did find a second location of that weed. It was Scotch thistle. And so the second location was actually in Castle Rock rather than Longview, so quite dispersed. We have not found any additional plants from that. Those plants tend to grow very tall, so ideally we would see those over a fence line or something like that, but we haven't found any more of those.
How do they propagate through the wind blowing?
Yes, so the Scotch thistle is a windblown seed. They spread by wind or get stuck on equipment or animals and travel that way as well.
Animals and trucks and
Animals,
mud, right?
Trucks
I mean,
and mud.
Yeah.
All the heavy-
Transporting
the
from
big-
other
Big
areas.
tools, big equipment, new soils, sometimes road building materials, things like that. Whatever you move around, it might have weeds on it.
Yeah.
So, other than that, we'll be focusing on knotweed for the next couple of weeks. While we have this crew for just this week and next week, we do have a couple other project areas we'll be working in with just our staff and our seasonal technician. So
Have you been out to the bridge or the area that got washed out on your way to St. Helens?
we haven't made it up that far this year with, I haven't received permission to go further than the closure. So
But you have been up to the closure?
No,
You haven't?
haven't
okay.
had a chance this year.
I'm just curious if there's any progress there.
So the collaborative is having another field trip like we had last October.
Yeah,
It'll be in October, and a trip to the landslide is one of the featured stops. So I'll get the information for you when the dates come out, and you can put it on your calendar if you'd like.
I think Mr. Dahl will pull out his old bull taco and use that.
See if we can't get across there.
Depends how fast you go from one.
Yeah.
So I don't have many other updates right now. We're just pretty busy trying to follow the knotweed. So
Yeah, busy time of year, isn't
yes.
it? Yeah.
Okay, and financially, how are things going?
Things are going. We're working with the assessor. I'm supposed to be providing an updated parcel assessment list. When we did the changes in our assessment last year, the public parcels did not get addressed. And so I'm reviewing the data to ensure that everyone that is included is supposed to be, and everyone who's not allowed to be included is not. So we're working on fixing that.
I am thinking that when it is this season and it's time to really go after the weeds, there's always a labor shortage. You can't quite get enough bodies up there I mean, 2 outings a weekend is, it's almost not worth it.
Yeah.
Because the numbers. But it occurred to me that in the next year or so, the State Department of Corrections is transferring a whole bunch of firefighters
Mhm.
from their Large Mountain facility. And I'm just wondering if those folks are incarcerated between fires here. Maybe there may be an opportunity to organize something. I want to keep that in mind and inquire as to how cooperative they might be. They're minimum security because they train them to fight forest fires.
Right.
They're
funny you
going to be
mention
housed
that.
here, so
It's
Probably
funny you
6
mentioned that.
probably about 60. I think they said
Okay.
they were planning to bring 60, right?
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
that might be an opportunity.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, we were researching the opportunity of working with one of the corrections crews, and I can't recall which organization it was through. But we were looking at trying to get them up to Mount St. Helens for Scotch burn removal this fall. I haven't set it in stone yet, so
Yeah.
still exploring that option. But yes, labor shortage is a thing in our department too.
Yeah.
The ideal position for our seasonal technicians is typically a college age student who's available for summer quarter or so. And most of our students have gone back to college now. So we're down to 1 right now.
So when you hire college interns, do they get credit because they're doing some research, or it's just you're
Not
only
at
doing
this
slave
time.
labor? Labor. hard
It's
labor.
just a job at this point. I would be open to if any of the colleges wanted to do credit, I would be open to that opportunity because it is a really great learning opportunity. They learn about the diversity of plants and both good and bad plants.
So one of the ideas that is being developed by the Columbia Spirit Lake Collaborative
Mhm.
is economic resilience and trying to stimulate job opportunities. And part of that is working with LCC to expand research opportunities on the mountain for all kinds of different things for which you get college credit. They may be somebody that you could work out a work study type
Mhm.
opportunity to
And that
hopefully
was
get
the collaborative you
more
said?
folks. Yeah, the guy at LCC is a guy by the name of Gaither.
Okay.
Jim, I think it's Jim Gaither, Gaither. And he develops their business development
Mhm.
director, something like that.
I'll have to
That
reach
might
out
be
to him.
another opportunity to
Yeah.
try to work with them, because I know he's looking for opportunities to college students out on the slopes.
Awesome. That would be good. They could help with plant surveys or things like that to help us prepare for our treatments.
And the collaborative, one of the other goals is to help with endangered species. So that
Yeah.
absolutely is consistent with what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other ideas or questions?
No,
All right.
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Well, Arn said he'd always go out if you invite him, give him enough notice.
You know, those thistles look a lot like artichokes to me.
They do have similar qualities.
I think it technically is a thistle, isn't it?
I can't remember. I'm not sure that I've looked up that information.
Mhm.
They're very similar.
Mhm.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we do have executive session, I think 10, 15,
I think 10 minutes would work.
10 minutes, okay. We will adjourn to that for performance of an employee.
The board is extending the executive session for a period of 5 minutes until 3:17 p.m.
I know, that's what's gonna probably happen.
So do we,
have to listen to him talk about that all the time.
we don't have any motions to make, do we?
Nope. We're back from an executive session. No decisions were made. Any final thoughts on miscellaneous, if there is any? Don't see anything. We will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.